The Liberal cabinet buckled under pressure from myself, the local First Nation, and really the people of Powell River in this country, and finally, after nearly 3 months, accepted the recommendation from Canada's energy regulator to reject the electricity export permit request from Brookfield Renewables.
Now we get to the good news. Ladies and gentlemen, many of you, especially those of you over out in BC, know about the Powell River Energy organization out there. Now, Powell River, just to give a bit of context, so Powell River Energy's facilities were originally built nearly 100 years ago to power the local pulp mill in Powell River. With the permanent closure of that mill in 2021, thank you very much to Justin Trudeau and his economic policies, PREI has limited options to sell its energy directly in British Columbia, as provincial regulations prohibit the sale of power directly to customers, including to residents in the Powell River region. Energy sales in the export market will provide PREI with the predictable revenues needed to ensure the long-term viability. So what am I talking about here? Well, there's something going on in Powell River. For those of you that live there or are around there, you know what's going on. But this comes back to a little company called Brookfield. So back in 2013, they acquired the remaining 50% of Powell River Energy. So they had a stake in it, and they acquired the remaining 50% that was available. And this allowed them to take control of the company and start profiting from said company. What's the issue? Well, they actually did something, and this is on the Government of Canada's website. So in August of last year, Powell River, which is Powell River Energy, aka Brookfield, has applied to the Canada Energy Regulator under Division 2 of Part 7 of the Canadian Energy Regulator Act for authorization to export up to 700,000 megawatts of combined firm and interruptible energy annually for a period of 30 years. The applicant or its affiliates, notice they don't say Brookfield, has an interest in generation or transmission facilities in Canada within Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec as set out in the application. So what they want to do is they basically want to say, we want approval from Canada's energy regulator to take all the energy that's produced by Powell River Energy and ship it south to the United States. And that would be a 100% profit by Brookfield as that energy is sold. None of that money would actually remain in Canada. Sure, it's Powell River Energy that is making the sale, but all that money ends up going into Brookfield Renewables, and Brookfield Renewables is down in the United States. So this got some people a little annoyed, and it got some of the Indigenous bands annoyed too. I'm not going to butcher the name of this Indigenous band out of respect. So this Indigenous band stated very clearly that they oppose the 30-year export of local power to the US, launching a campaign and saying, keep our power local, stop the 30-year giveaway to the USA. And this is what they say. So they are calling on the Canada Energy Regulator, or the CER, to reject a proposal from Brookfield Power's subsidiary PREI to export all power generated at the Tiscat Dam to the United States for the next 30 years. Quote, this plan breaks the agreement we signed in good faith, end quote, said Higas John Hackett. Quote, we expected the power from Tiscat to support businesses, jobs, and opportunities for our people and the region. Instead, Brookfield wants to ship every megawatt south. During a trade dispute and rising demand for clean energy at home, selling out Canada's future is unimaginable, end quote. The proposal directly contradicts the Memorandum of Understanding MOU. See how amazing MOUs are and how solid they are, aka not. Signed between this particular Indigenous band and Brookfield Power, which was intended to ensure local access to power. This Indigenous band has repeatedly requested that a portion of energy be reserved for regional redevelopment, but these requests have been ignored. It wasn't just them. The members of parliament in that region, Aaron Gunn, had stood up many times and has been very, very vocally against this, and a lot of people in that region and frankly across Canada have been standing up and voicing their concern. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what a satisfying day when this video came out.
A rare victory for taxpayers and common sense. Last night I was informed that the Liberal cabinet buckled under pressure from myself, the local First Nation, and really the people of Powell River in this country, and finally, after nearly 3 months, accepted the recommendation from Canada's energy regulator to reject the electricity export permit request from Brookfield Renewables to send Canadian hydroelectricity out of Powell River to the United States with almost no benefits to the people who live here. And this comes after weeks and months of bringing this up. We brought it up 4 times in the House of Commons. We introduced a parliamentary petition with thousands of signatures. We wrote a letter to Canada's energy regulator. And this is really a historic decision, because this is the first time in Canadian history that Canada's energy regulator has rejected an electricity export permit request, and the credit has to go to everybody who spoke out, who wrote letters, who shared this on social media, and just created so much pressure on the government. But while this is an important step, this is an important victory, it is not the end of our fight, because what happens now is it goes to what's known as a full licensing process, which allows Canada's energy regulator to hold public hearings, to conduct further investigation, and also impose conditions on an eventual electricity export, such as supplying local needs first or providing greater benefit to the local community. And my first step in continuing this fight as a local member of parliament is to demand that Canada's energy regulator, at the earliest possible opportunity, holds public hearings in the city of Powell River so that the people of Powell River can have their voice heard and have their say. This is an important local resource. These dams were built over 100 years ago to provide power to the local pulp mill that employed thousands of people, and now they provide almost no support to the local community, and people are rightly frustrated. And this is also part of a broader fight that I believe in, where Canadian resources should go towards benefiting the Canadian people first and our national interest first, especially in the context of this trade dispute and trade war with the United States. And as long as I'm a member of parliament, I am never going to stop fighting for the people of my riding on issues such as these and the people of this country.
So thank you for your continued work and your continued efforts, Mr. Gunn, and your relentless resilience for the people in your riding, as well as people across this country in fighting for our natural resources. This would be, I don't even know what the word is, but if somehow this continues and this is allowed to happen, I don't see how the Liberals can stand up and say, Orange man bad, Donald Trump is you know, there is a threat, you know, he's coming for our resources, he's coming for all this stuff, while at the same time approving that Canada's energy regulator take our energy. Like, how can 1 + 4 equal 10,000? Because that's what they want Canadians to actually think here. And it would be insane. And here's the bigger issue. So the critics of this are arguing, listen, right now, BC Hydro, they're the ones that provide power to basically all of BC. And they will buy power from some of the independents, you know, when they need it. And are they buying some from Powell River right now? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. That can be discussed. But the issue is going to come in this fashion. So let's say down the road, the infrastructure and the needs of British Columbia increases. BC Hydro needs more power. And they say, hey, Powell River, we need some of your power. Powell River says, sorry, we have a 30-year mandate and we're sending all of our power to the United States. Bye-bye. That's a problem. And the other problem is all of the money that is being generated is leaving the country. So sure, there's people working at Powell River, but for what? All that energy and all that money is leaving Canada. And this is the main argument that is being put forth on this. And it's a very, very pertinent argument. And I agree with Mr. Gunn. This should be talked about, and that argument should be made in public inquiries. And it should be available online for Canadians across this country to watch this, to hear the arguments from Canada's energy regulator, from Brookfield, and from all the critics of it. Show it all. Let's see what happens. But in the meantime, it is always good to see Brookfield have their nose kind of rubbed in this and saying, nope, not today, Brookfield. You don't get to win today. Thank you very much. Thanks for playing. But we have Conservatives that actually care about Canadian jobs, and we have Conservatives that care about keeping money in Canada and actually following through on what they say in the election campaign. And this is the really important part about this, because during the election campaign, all we heard from Pierre and the Conservatives was Canada first. Let's put Canada first, and then we can take care of the rest of the world once we're taken care of. Which makes sense, because it doesn't make any sense for us to be giving tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid over a decade to other countries when we can't even feed our own people, we can't even provide health care for our own people, and we cannot provide law enforcement for our own people.
Or housing. Look at how expensive homes are.
Meanwhile, we're sending money, for Sex Work the Musical. I will keep coming back to that.
Because it's so ridiculous. Well, was it like 20 grand or something like that?
Oh, I think it was between 23 and 57 grand. It was
ridiculous.
Stupid.
Yeah.
So we're sending money like that around the world when we cannot take care of our own people. If we can take care of all of our own people, then we can talk about foreign aid. Not Sex Work the Musical, but we can talk about foreign aid. So this is what the Conservatives were saying that whole time. And now, what have we seen the Conservatives do? Continue to fight for that consistent message. That's the main difference that we've seen. Carney was, we're going to build Canada strong. We're going to build Canada strong. Judge me at the grocery store and all of this thing. Grocery prices are skyrocketing, but apparently it's not his fault, just like it wasn't Justin Trudeau's fault. It's never the Liberals' fault. It's everybody else's fault. But when good things happen in Canada, oh, now it's the Liberals' fault. They did it because it's good. And I'm going to handle Donald Trump. Meanwhile, I'm not even talking to Donald Trump. I don't care. Who cares about Donald Trump? Well, where's the deal you're going to get? And why aren't you fighting for all the resources to stay in Canada? That's the main question. So it's always good to see Brookfield think they have an ace in the hole and they think they're going to get what they want. It's nice to see them once in a while when they actually don't get what they want. So hopefully this remains, and they can figure out how to actually have Powell River supply power to the local population, or in a way that they sell it to BC Hydro, and then BC Hydro sells it down to the United States, and then at least we're keeping revenue in Canada. So at least with BC Hydro sells it to the United States, that stays in Canada, and that revenue stays in Canada. So this is where we're at. So it's really nice to see that. So thank you to everybody out in Powell River and everybody across the country that signed the petition, that put pressure on government. And this is, people will say to us, well, petitions don't work. Petitions are useless.
What's the point?
What's the point? Sometimes they work. Sometimes they apply that pressure. Like the EV mandate, where they were going to make people purchase all electric vehicles by 2030. 100% of sales in Canada
Or
would
was
have,
it 2035?
something like that.
Point being, they all electric, or sorry, all vehicles in Canada needed to be electric, and it's not going to work in a climate like Canada.
Right. And we've discussed this ad nauseum. Everybody understands that. A lot of people don't want electric vehicles. A lot of people, some people do like electric vehicles. But the point
and that's
is,
fine. You should be able to choose,
Yeah.
right? So we had put out a petition. I think it got around 23,000 signatures, and they did stop the mandate. Now, I'm not saying that was
as a result of the
sole
petition.
cause or anything like that, but I do believe that it helped.
Yeah, I don't think it hurt,
Exactly.
because it showed there was Canadians that actually did care about it. And there was Canadians that, in addition to that petition, would have sent emails, would have made phone calls, would have had in-person conversations with Liberals across the country about these things. So petitions can have an impact, and they can demonstrate support. They can demonstrate that there's pushback on certain policies. So to everybody that does participate in petitions that you believe in, that you support, thank you for doing that, because that's one way of engaging in democracy. And
it's a very low risk way to do it, right? If there's something you believe in and you go on the House of Commons website and you see that there's a petition, sign your name. Because honestly, how long does it take? Maybe 2 minutes? And what are the risks? Well, you have to give your email address and your phone number to the House of Commons.
which they already have.
Pretty much, if you're a registered voter, they have it.
Yeah.
So, it's very low risk. It's also possibly very low reward because, well, what if the petition only gets 30 signatures? It's not going to get noticed. But you're still participating in democracy. So to me, the risk is definitely worth the reward, which could be huge, right?
Yeah. And I've seen some people say, well, I don't think it's going to work, but it took 30 seconds, so I might as well sign it. And we appreciate that. Because that's all it takes is 30 seconds. So for any petition that you think, even if you don't think it's going to work, if you agree with the cause, get behind it. And you're not going to agree with everyone, but look at the ones that you agree with, get behind it. Because if it's the same thing as voting. And I bet there's people in the riding of Terrebonne that said, my vote doesn't matter. My vote won't count. My vote, it's just one vote. I don't matter. Well, turns out that your vote does matter. So
a lot.
Get involved in democracy and you can make a difference.